Clara, I was wrong, it was all a misunderstanding. Please, give me another chance. The man knelt on the ground humbly. The once high and mighty business tycoon was now in a sorry state, his eyes red. Clara stared at him coldly, unmoved. Trevor, I gave up 5 years ago. Now, we're strangers. A pair of exquisitely beautiful twins stood in front of her, hands on hips, speaking in unison. Want to date our mommy? You'll have to get past US first. Unless you can prove you're good enough for her. I made an exception today and allowed George and Anna to stay at their grandmother's house, considering I have to attend the Global Medical Technology Summit tonight. For the past 5 years, I've almost never let them out of my sight for a second. Mommy, remember to wear that blue dress tonight, it suits your style. George pushed up his little glasses and reminded me seriously. Yes, Mommy is the most beautiful. Anna clapped her hands in agreement, revealing her signature little fangs. I kissed their foreheads and told them to be good and listen to their grandmother. But I couldn't help but think to myself, how can 5-year-olds be so concerned about things like little adults? Deep down, I know that these twins inherited my intelligence and his stubbornness. Thinking of him, my heart skipped a beat. Trevor, the business tycoon who once decided my and my children's fate with a single text message. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our final guest of the evening, Dr. Clara, a pioneer in the field of regenerative medicine. A burst of enthusiastic applause filled the hall. The moment I stepped onto the stage, I felt all eyes on me. Wearing a dark indigo haute couture gown, I stood under the spotlight, my gaze sweeping across the room before settling on a familiar figure in the front row. Trevor. 5 years had passed, and he still possessed that handsome, aloof demeanor, only a hint of weariness etched into his eyes. The moment our eyes met, he visibly paused, a complex mix of emotions flashing in his eyes. I quickly looked away and began my speech. The groundbreaking application of novel biomaterials in organ repair is the culmination of my 5 years of dedicated research. This technology will change the lives of millions of patients. My voice was clear and confident, a stark contrast to the humble contract wife I was 5 years ago. Near the end of my presentation, the large screen flickered. I paused, then continued explaining the final data. But the next second, the entire screen switched, and 2 adorable cartoon avatars popped up against a starry background, George and Anna. Go, Mommy. You're the best. Remember to come home early, we've prepared a birthday cake and a puzzle for you. 2 children's voices rang out in turn. The audience gasped in surprise at first, then burst into knowing laughter and applause. I stood on the stage, my heart almost stopping. I knew who did it. George must have hacked into some system again. That kid could crack most network firewalls at 5 years old. I didn't know whether to be proud or worried. The images on the big screen continued, showing my research findings, awards, and video clips of my speeches over the past few years. Finally, the screen stopped at a photo of me with my 2 children, George, Anna, 5 years old. At that moment, I heard a gasp erupt from the entire hall. The media reporters who had previously avoided me were frantically snapping photos. Trevor, in the front row, looked visibly shaken. My gaze was involuntarily drawn to him. He suddenly stood up, his face as pale as paper, staring intently at the 2 small faces on the screen that were identical to his own. 5 years old. His lips moved silently. I saw him turn to his assistant and whisper something urgently. The assistant nodded immediately and hurried out of the room. At that moment, I knew a storm was brewing. 5 years of peaceful life were about to be shattered. Seeing the shock and complex emotions in Trevor's eyes, I calmed down. The children had accidentally fired the first shot for me. Clara was no longer the weak woman she once was, at the mercy of others. If Trevor wants to get involved in my life and my child's life, he'd better be prepared this time, when I'll set all the rules. I gracefully ended my speech and left amidst thunderous applause. Behind me, I could feel Trevor's burning gaze, like a thorn in my back. My phone vibrated. It was a message from George. Mommy, we might have accidentally hacked into the summit system. But don't worry, I've wiped all traces, no one can find us. Daddy looks shocked, doesn't he? I smiled and replied, you two little rascals. Mommy will deal with you when she gets back. Trevor sat in his office, listlessly twirling his pen, his thoughts still lingering on yesterday's summit. The faces of those two children were etched into his mind like a brand, their features, damn it, were practically carbon copies of his own. 5 years old, the timeline matches perfectly. President, the data is ready. The assistant knocked and carefully placed a folder in front of me. He eagerly opened the file. Clara's experiences over the past 5 years were presented in their entirety, a graduate of Harvard Medical School, recipient of numerous international awards, and a top expert in her field. And the twins were indeed born 5 years ago. Did you find the text message records? Trevor asked, referring to the one that demanded she have an abortion. I'm sorry, Mr. President, the records are too old, and... Keep investigating. Trevor interrupted him, his voice chillingly cold. I absolutely did not send those kinds of text messages. In my memory, I was indeed very cold towards her during that contractual marriage 5 years ago. But to make her have an abortion? I could never do such a thing. He flipped through those pages and saw Clara's current address and workplace. He had to see her and explain everything. Dr. Clara, your personal cell phone has been called 15 times again from the same number, the assistant whispered. Block him. Clara didn't look up, continuing to focus on the sample under the microscope. He also sent emails, spam. She replied flatly. Trevor stood outside the medical center's main gate, watching the busy figures inside. This was the 3rd time he'd been turned away. Her defenses were impeccable. All her social media accounts were blocked at the highest level, and phone calls, emails, and messages all disappeared without a trace. Trevor, perhaps you should, shut up. I waved my hand to interrupt the driver's suggestion, my eyes fixed on my watch. It's almost time for school to let out. Since we can't get in through the main gate, let's find a way in. The children, my children, they will be the bridge between Clara and me. At the entrance of the residential compound, 2 small figures in school uniforms stood out. The boy was holding a tablet, his expression focused. The girl, with 2 little braids, was bouncing around, looking playful and cute. Trevor took a deep breath and strode forward. Hello, I am. Before he could finish speaking, the boy mechanically recited my information without looking up. Trevor, chairman of M Group, worth over 10 billion, born in. Wow, it really is Daddy. The girl tilted her head, blinked her big eyes, and called out sweetly. His heart skipped a beat, and his eyes welled up with tears. The word Daddy caught him off guard. Want to see Mommy? The boy looked up, his little face serious than a child's. Please pass the Mommy's Guardian Alliance's initial certification first. What certification? I didn't understand. The next second, his phone vibrated, receiving an encrypted file. Opening it, he found it filled with highly difficult logic puzzles and programming problems. Trevor froze. These were problems far beyond the capabilities of ordinary people. Little friend, my name is George, and she is Anna, not little friend, the boy corrected. These questions are designed by me to test your IQ and technical skills. After all, we can't entrust Mommy to someone with a low IQ. He was speechless for a moment. Trevor, who was invincible in the business world, was actually choked speechless by a 5-year-old child. Daddy, don't mind my brother. Anna tugged at my sleeve. I have an easier task. If you can help me complete the Find the Lost Treasure game, I'll tell you what Mommy's favorite flower is. Trevor crouched down and asked, what treasure? 5 minutes later, in the community garden, Trevor was digging in the dirt as Anna instructed. Passers-by cast strange glances his way. The president of M Group, dressed in a suit and tie, was digging in the dirt looking for some pirate treasure. Wrong. Daddy, it's under that tree on the left, not here. Anna shouted from the side. He wiped the sweat from his forehead, gritted his teeth, and moved to another spot. George sat on the bench, his eyes fixed on the tablet, occasionally glancing up at it with a barely perceptible smile playing on his lips. An hour later, disheveled, I finally dug out a small box containing only a note: "Congratulations on passing the first level. Mommy's favorite is the blue rose. Hint for the next level: what is the password to Mommy's office?" I watched the siblings smirking in the distance. However, seeing their smiles, Trevor felt an unprecedented surge of emotion. These were his children, his blood. He had to mend this family, no matter what. That evening, Trevor quietly began investigating the text message from 5 years ago, going through the records from that time, especially those of the people around him. If someone tampered with the text messages on his phone, that person must still be around, and harbor hostility towards Clara. His phone suddenly vibrated. It was a message from George: "Barely passed today. See you at the school gate tomorrow at noon for the second test. And bring your brain with you." Trevor chuckled. This kid was stubborn but soft-hearted, just like his mother. He stared at the investigation results on the computer screen, becoming increasingly convinced that someone was manipulating the devastating text message from 5 years ago. And that person was very likely within his closest circle. Standing before the floor-to-ceiling window of the CEO's office, Trevor gazed at the city view, but his mind was filled with images of the two children. George and Anna, he didn't even know they existed. He was certain he had never sent the text message urging her to abort the child, so he picked up the photo on the table and gently stroked it. George's features in the photo were a spitting image of Trevor as a child, while Anna's lively expression was strikingly similar to her mother's. The phone rang suddenly. "Brother, I heard you're looking for Clara? I happen to know a friend of hers at the research institute where she works. Do you want me to help you arrange a meeting with her?" Felicity's sweet voice came from the other end of the line. "No need," Trevor coldly refused. "Brother, don't be so cold. By the way, I heard she came back with 2 kids. After all these years, she actually had children. Who do you think they are?" Felicity's voice was filled with gossipy excitement. Trevor's hand tightened suddenly, his eyes turning cold. "Felicity, this is none of your business." Hanging up the phone, I called Tom's assistant. "Go and find out who's been spreading rumors about Clara within the company lately." "Yes, President. Also, there's been some progress on the text message you investigated 5 years ago. It seems your communication device was tampered with back then." I narrowed my eyes. "Continue the investigation. Make sure you find out everything. Also, I need to know what Felicity has been up to lately." Tom's assistant hesitated for a moment. "Miss Felicity?" "As you wish." As evening fell, Trevor, holding the last clue to Anna's treasure hunt, finally found the small pink box by the fountain in the city park. "Did you find it?" Anna's soft voice came through the phone. "Found it," he said, picking up the box and wiping the sweat from his brow a little awkwardly. "What kind of game is this?" "Daddy, you're too slow. I thought you'd given up," the little girl giggled. "This is a patience test that my brother and I designed. Congratulations on passing the first level." Trevor chuckled, annoyed. "What about my reward? Didn't you say you'd tell me what your mom's favorite flower is?" "Mommy's favorite flower is white gardenia, but..." She suddenly lowered her voice. "An aunt named Felicity came to see Mommy. She's so strange." Trevor's heart skipped a beat. "Felicity? She went to see your mother?" "Yes, she said her brother sent her, but Mommy doesn't believe her at all. She even secretly asked if we were your children, and said something about how Mommy took a lot of money to leave back then." "How annoying." Trevor's blood nearly froze. Felicity was indeed behind this. "Anna, can you do Daddy a favor? If Aunt Felicity comes looking for you again, can you tell me quietly?" "Sure, but Daddy, why are you so nervous? Do you and Aunt Felicity have a secret?" The child keenly noticed my change in mood. He took a deep breath. "Daddy needs to find out some things. It's important." Hanging up, Trevor immediately drove to Clara's apartment. He had to warn her to be careful of Felicity. When he arrived at Clara's apartment building, he saw Felicity coming out of the front door. A flicker of panic crossed her face when she saw Trevor, but she quickly put on a smile. "Brother, what are you doing here? Why did you come to see Clara?" Trevor asked coldly. I just heard she's back and wanted to catch up." She lowered her head, looking aggrieved. "After all, she used to be my sister-in-law." Trevor stared at her, his suspicions growing stronger. "Felicity, I don't want you interfering in my affairs." "Brother, you still care about her, don't you?" "But she took the money and left, abandoning the child." "Enough!" I interrupted her sharply. "I don't want to hear that again." Felicity bit her lip, tears welling in her eyes. "Brother, you've changed. Since when did you start believing outsiders instead of me?" Trevor didn't answer, he simply turned and went up to the elevator. That evening, I received an anonymous email containing a set of IP addresses and several screenshots showing someone using Felicity's private account to spread false information about Clara online. A blurry photo, seemingly from 5 years ago, was also attached to the email. Trevor stared at the screen, feeling like he was touching the edge of the truth. Who was this anonymous sender? Could it be George? Just how much information did this kid possess? My phone suddenly vibrated. It was a text message. "Miss Felicity asked me to tell you that she knows the truth about Clara's departure back then and wants to see you alone tomorrow." On the computer screen, in the blurry photo, there seemed to be Felicity's shadow and a cell phone. Who sent that devastating text message from 5 years ago? The truth was right before their eyes, but they had a vague feeling that this might be a trap. The phone rang. It was Tom's assistant. "President, we've found it. 5 years ago, on the day you were hospitalized, it was indeed Ms. Felicity who replied to Ms. Clara's message on your behalf." Following the clues left by the children, I mobilized the company's top hacking team to break through layers of encryption. Trevor couldn't believe his eyes. His heart nearly stopped when the original record of the text message from 5 years ago finally appeared before him. "Found it, Trevor," came the voice of the hacking team leader. "This is the original server record of the text message from 5 years ago, along with complete evidence of tampering." Trevor stared intently at the screen, his breathing becoming labored. There, clearly recorded, was the original text message sent to Clara. "Clara, I heard you're pregnant. I'm in a dangerous situation lately. We can talk about the baby later. Once I've sorted everything out, I'll provide you and the baby with a safe environment." Clara received the message. "Clara, abort the child, here's the money, we're even." Felicity was behind it all. The chain of evidence on the screen was impeccable. Felicity had bribed Trevor's assistant, altered the text messages, and cut off all communication with Clara. "Trevor? Are you all right?" There was no answer. An unprecedented pain swept through his body, instantly draining him of all strength. Clara's thin, desperate figure flashed before his eyes as she left. She was carrying my child, yet she received such a cruel and heartless message, and I, in fact, was blaming her for leaving without saying goodbye. "Investigate. Find out everything Felicity has done in the last 5 years." Trevor's voice was hoarse and unlike his own. That same afternoon, a well-hidden safe was discovered in Felicity's private office. Upon opening the box, Trevor was chilled to the bone by what he found inside: a jade pendant stained with blood, the very item left behind by the mysterious man who had saved his life 5 years ago. "This is impossible." Trevor picked up the pendant with trembling hands, as memories flooded back. 5 years ago, Trevor was assassinated during a secret business negotiation. At the last moment, a blurry figure saved him, but the person was seriously injured in the chaos, leaving behind only this jade pendant. He vowed to find this benefactor and repay his life-saving grace. Trevor immediately retrieved the hospital's old records, cross-referencing the timeline with the DNA from the bloodstains on the jade pendant. When the results came back, it was as if the world had completely collapsed. DNA comparison results, a perfect match with Ms. Clara's blood sample. My mind went blank, and the jade pendant fell to the ground. Clara had saved him. And yet, when Clara needed him most, he received a text message telling her to abort the child. She was not only my wife, but also my savior. The mastermind behind all of this is Felicity. Trevor, there's more, the assistant whispered. We've discovered Felicity is plotting something, targeting Miss Clara's 2 children. I looked up abruptly, a terrible rage blazing in my eyes. She dares. Just then, his phone vibrated. It was a message from George. Daddy, we were taken away by that bad auntie, and Mommy doesn't know. She said she was going to take us to see you, but I have a bad feeling. We're. Felicity, how dare you lay a hand on my child? Mobilize all available manpower, target location locked at. Trevor calmly issued the order, but the anger and fear inside him were almost tearing him apart. Clara not only gave me life, but also 2 gifted children. And yet he single-handedly pushed all of that away, even putting them in danger. Trevor vowed that this time, he would never let them down again, no matter the cost. Felicity, you're finished. He picked up the blood-stained jade pendant and walked towards the door. Clara hasn't been able to get a proper rest lately due to the constant anxiety. Every time she sees the kids go out, she's terribly worried. She knows all too well how much malice and cunning lies hidden beneath Felicity's seemingly benevolent facade. Clara insisted on personally picking up and dropping off the children at school every day, fearing they might encounter any danger. That afternoon, she was unexpectedly delayed by an urgent company meeting and had to ask her assistant to pick up the children. Just after the meeting ended, an urgent notification popped up on her phone. That was the safety warning system George had set up, indicating an abnormal location. The children hadn't returned home along the planned route. Her heart sank to the bottom. He frantically dialed his assistant's number, but there was no answer. He then tried calling the children, but their phones were all switched off. He immediately understood what had happened. Felicity, Trevor muttered through gritted teeth, and immediately mobilized all resources to begin the investigation. 10 minutes later, George's hidden program sent me an encrypted message with a blurry location and a short text. Mommy, don't worry, my sister and I are okay, but we were taken away by bad guys. They don't know I hid a backup communicator. My fingertips were cold, but the child's calmness gave me a glimmer of hope. Just as I was about to contact the police, my phone rang again. Clara, Trevor's deep voice came through. The children have been kidnapped. It was Felicity who did it. I have their location and I'm on my way. I want to go too. I almost yelled. It's too dangerous, they're my children. I interrupted him, my voice trembling with anger. Give me the address, or I'll call the police right now. After a brief silence, Trevor gave me the address, an abandoned factory. I immediately drove there, a mixture of fear and anger churning within me. When I arrived, the entire factory was surrounded by black cars. Trevor's men were making their deployment, and he was about to enter the factory alone. I'll go with you, I stopped him. Trevor shook his head, his eyes more resolute than ever before. I'll go. It's my fault, I can't let you and the children take any more risks. Trevor, the surveillance footage shows 4 armed men inside, a bodyguard reported in a low voice. Trevor nodded, took off his suit jacket, unbuttoned his shirt cuffs, rolled up his sleeves, and his eyes flashed with a cold, sharp light I had never seen before. Give me 10 minutes. I tried to follow, but his men stopped me. Through the broken windows of the factory, I witnessed a shocking scene. Trevor moved silently through the darkness like a cheetah, using cover to approach the first guard. His movements were swift and precise. The guard was subdued before he could even react. He then took the guard's weapon and continued on his way. At the second corner, Trevor was shot, suffering a graze to his shoulder, his shirt stained with blood. My heart ached, but he didn't slow down at all. Instead, he pressed on with even greater determination. Meanwhile, through the broken window, I saw George and Anna bound in the central area. Surprisingly, they didn't seem panicked. George's eyes were constantly scanning their surroundings warily, as if looking for an opportunity, while Anna kept talking to the guards, who were clearly captivated by her. "Uncle, do you know why sharks don't eat clownfish?" Anna asked innocently, but her eyes gleamed with shrewdness. As the guard approached impatiently, Anna suddenly accidentally tripped and fell, pulling down his clothes. In that instant, Trevor pounced on her from the side. During the struggle, one of the kidnappers raised his gun and aimed it at the baby. Trevor stepped in front of him without hesitation, a bullet grazing his side. Despite the excruciating pain, he lunged forward and subdued the last kidnapper. The entire process took less than 10 minutes, all 4 armed kidnappers were subdued, while Trevor was covered in injuries. "Daddy!" Anna exclaimed, a hint of worry flashing in her eyes as she saw Trevor's wounds. Trevor quickly untied the children's ropes and shielded them behind him. Just then, Felicity emerged from the shadows, his gun pointed directly at Trevor. "How touching, risking everything for this bitch's child," she sneered. "Do you know how much I've endured these past 5 years? I was about to succeed, and then she came back and ruined everything. You orchestrated everything 5 years ago." Trevor's voice was low, his eyes filled with murderous intent. "Why? Why?" Felicity laughed maniacally. "Because only when she's gone can I get everything that should have been mine. Including you, Trevor." Just as she was about to pull the trigger, a gunshot rang out. Felicity screamed and fell to the ground, she had been shot in the wrist. Police squads poured in from all directions. It turned out, unable to bear being left out, I had already quietly called the police. Trevor walked towards me, covered in blood and carrying 2 children. His shirt was almost soaked in blood, and his face was still bleeding from the wounds, but he held the 2 children tightly, his eyes filled with worry and relief. "I'm sorry I'm late," he said softly, handing the children to me before staggering due to blood loss. I supported him, and seeing how he was willing to give his life to protect our child, a crack suddenly appeared in the ice in my heart. "Why did you do this?" I asked in a low voice. Trevor forced a smile, his eyes filled with regret and complexity as he looked at me. "Because this is what I owe you." His gaze was fixed on me, as if trying to see into the depths of my soul. I found out the truth about what happened 5 years ago. "Clara, I need to have a serious talk with you." I gazed at the darkening sky outside the window, my fingers unconsciously tapping lightly on the desk. Today was the day my revenge plan would finally be revealed. 5 years of forbearance, 5 years of suffering, could finally come to an end. The M Group's quarterly shareholders meeting was held as scheduled, and I deliberately chose this occasion. All the important figures related to the group would be in attendance, including Felicity, who had been scheming against me all along. "Clara, are you really going to do this?" Tom's assistant asked me quietly. "It's time," I replied calmly, my gaze falling on the USB drive I had carefully prepared in my hand. The conference room was bustling with noise. I sat in the back row with George and Anna. Trevor stood on the stage, his gaze searching for something before finally settling on us. He gave a barely perceptible nod, and I knew everything was ready. "Ladies and gentlemen, before we discuss the quarterly results, I have something important to clarify." Trevor's voice echoed throughout the conference room, silencing all conversation. Felicity sat in the front row, her usual insincere smile on her face, completely unaware of what was about to happen. The large screen lit up, and the first piece of evidence played, a comparison between the original text message from 5 years ago and the altered version. I thought I was mentally prepared, but when I saw the message, "Clara, I heard you're pregnant. I'm in a dangerous situation lately. We can talk about the baby later. Once I've sorted everything out, I'll give you and the baby a safe environment." I was shocked. When the cold, hard words, "Clara, abort the child, here's the money, we're even," appeared on the screen alongside them, I still couldn't help but tremble. The room erupted in uproar. "This can't be. This is a frame-up." Felicity screamed, standing up, but her expression betrayed her. Trevor relentlessly continued to present the evidence, bank transfer records showing Felicity bribing his former assistant, surveillance footage of her taking the jade pendant I left behind, and most appallingly, the complete recording of her plotting to kidnap George and Anna. "You can't do this to me." Felicity charged frantically toward Trevor, only to be stopped by the security guards who were already lying in wait. She struggled hysterically, her face contorted, completely tearing away her elegant and composed facade. Felicity, you not only tore up a family, but you also intended to harm an innocent child. The police have been waiting outside for a long time, and you will pay for your actions. Trevor's voice was as cold as ice. When the police took Felicity away, the hatred and resentment in her eyes were chilling. I instinctively pulled my 2 children into my arms, relieved that it was finally over. After the meeting, Trevor announced a decision that shocked everyone present. Effective immediately, I am transferring 30% of my core shares to George and Anna, to be managed by Ms. Clara until they reach adulthood. This is what I owe them, and it is my duty. I never expected him to take this step. This equity stake is enough to give me and the children a voice in the M Group, and even to influence major decisions. That evening, I had just put the children to bed when the doorbell rang. I opened the door, and Trevor stood outside, his eyes slightly red. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice a little hoarse. I silently made way for him. He entered the living room, but instead of sitting down, he knelt directly in front of me. "I cannot undo the mistakes of 5 years ago, nor do I deserve your forgiveness." His voice trembled. "Back then, I was in a business crisis, and someone wanted to kill me. I was afraid of implicating you and the child, so I wanted to wait until things calmed down before telling you the truth. I never wanted you to abort the child, and I never thought of abandoning you." He lowered his head, tears dripping onto the floor. Until the truth came out, I realized that I had hurt the most important people in this world. "You saved me when I was in the most danger, and yet I betrayed your love and trust." I stood there, watching this once arrogant and cold man kneel so humbly before me. He was once my everything, and he also hurt me beyond repair. I don't expect you to forgive me immediately. I just hope you can give me a chance to make up for the hurt I caused in the past, and let me try again to be a father to my children and someone who can protect you. I didn't answer. Moonlight streamed in through the window, illuminating the space between us. At that moment, the ice in my heart seemed to crack slightly, but 5 years of pain wouldn't be erased by a momentary impulse. "The children have a performance tomorrow," I finally spoke, my voice calmer than I had expected. "They would be delighted if you could come." Trevor looked up, his eyes sparkling with a hope I hadn't seen in a long time. "Get up." My voice was much calmer than I had expected. Trevor slowly stood up, the share transfer agreement still clutched in his long, slender fingers. I took the document, quickly glanced through it, and then looked up. "I will not accept these shares." I saw a flicker of pain in his eyes, but I continued, "They will be transferred directly to George and Anna's names, and I will manage them on their behalf until they come of age." "Okay, I'll do it your way." He answered without hesitation, the determination in his eyes making me momentarily dazed. Was this still the same cold-blooded Trevor? I took a deep breath, my voice calm and firm. "Trevor, 5 years ago, you showed me what despair meant. 5 years later, you showed me what regret means." I looked him straight in the eye. Forgiveness is not a trivial word. If you want to be involved in the children's growth, if you want to re-enter my life, you can. But remember, from now on, I will set all the rules. Trevor paused for a moment, then nodded. "I understand. I'll accept whatever the rules are." A small voice suddenly broke in. George stood beside me, a faint smile on his face. "Given your passable performance, you barely passed our sincerity test. I looked at my son in surprise, not expecting him to speak at this moment. George raised his little face, his eyes flashing with the same shrewdness as Trevor's, only with a touch more innocent cunning. "But you still have a long way to go to become a qualified dad," George said seriously. "We've decided to give you an indefinite trial opportunity." Trevor nodded earnestly to his 5-year-old son, a faint smile playing on his lips. "Thank you. I won't let you down." Anna then hugged my leg, tilted her little face up, and gave Trevor a sweet smile. "Daddy, good luck. Our test is going to be tough. You have to prove that you really love Mommy and us." Seeing the children's reactions, I felt a mix of emotions. It turned out that without my knowledge, they had already begun to ponder this complex family dynamic. In the days that followed, Trevor truly began his probationary period. On Monday morning, as I was getting ready to leave with the children, a black sedan was already parked at the door. The door opened, and Trevor got out, carrying 2 neatly arranged lunchboxes. "Lunch for the kids," he said. "I'll pick them up from school at 4 o'clock." George opened his lunchbox, where the food was arranged to resemble a starry sky, along with a small note that read, "Good luck today." Barely passing, George commented, trying to sound mature, but the undisguised joy in his eyes betrayed him. On Wednesday afternoon, I received a call from the school saying there was a parent-child activity that required parental participation. I was so busy with work that I was just about to ask for leave when I received a message from Trevor, "I'm already at school. Anna said we need to make a windmill." When I got home that evening, I saw the living room floor covered in colored paper, and Trevor and Anna were sitting on the carpet with all sorts of oddly shaped windmills in front of them. When Anna saw me, she excitedly held up one. "Mommy, look. Daddy's was super ugly, we had to redo it 8 times. Trevor looked helpless, his fingers covered in bandages. He looked at me with eyes full of tenderness. On Friday night, George suddenly challenged Trevor to a programming challenge. To my surprise, Trevor not only took it seriously, but after being defeated by George, he smiled and praised his son's talent, even teaching him some new skills. Watching them interact, my heart softened involuntarily. A month later, on a weekend, I opened the door to my house and heard a commotion coming from the kitchen. I went in and saw Trevor teaching his 2 children to cook. Soup had overflowed from the pot, and flour was spilled all over the floor. "Mommy!" Anna exclaimed excitedly when she saw me, "We're making you a birthday cake." I was stunned. It was my birthday today, and I had completely forgotten. Trevor looked at me without saying a word, but silently took out a small box. Inside was a simple silver chain with a small key as a pendant. "It's not an expensive gift," he said softly, "but it represents my promise. This key can unlock my heart whenever you want." I reached out and took the necklace, a warm feeling welling up inside me. 5 years ago, such a small gift would have been unremarkable, but now, it was more precious than any piece of jewelry. "Let me put it on for you, Mommy." George took the necklace and carefully put it on me. I looked at myself in the mirror, and at the figures of Trevor and the 2 children behind me, and without realizing it, a long-lost smile appeared on my lips. Anna suddenly clapped her hands. Mommy smiled. "Daddy, did you see that? You completed today's task." Trevor nodded gently, his eyes full of tenderness. "Yes, I saw it. This is the best gift I've ever received." I turned around and met his gaze. In that instant, something seemed to subtly change between us. What the future holds, I don't know. But at that moment, watching him clumsily wipe the flour off Anna's face, I suddenly felt that perhaps everyone deserves a chance to start over.